Do you ever feel like no matter what you do, that inner voice keeps pulling you down? Or maybe you've caught yourself overthinking something so much, it feels impossible to move forward. Here's the truth. Most of us unknowingly carry toxic thought patterns that quietly sabotage our confidence every single day. And the worst part, these patterns are sneaky. They disguise themselves as logic, caution, or even ambition. But in reality, they drain your self-belief and hold you back from living fully. Before we begin, I would appreciate it if you liked the video so that you can help me continue spreading Stoic philosophy. If you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you do so and activate the bell so you don't miss any future videos on Stoicism. In this video, we're going to uncover 10 of the most damaging toxic thought patterns that could be stealing your confidence right now. We're not just listing problems. You'll walk away with practical, actionable solutions for breaking free from each one. So whether you struggle with perfectionism, fear of judgment, or that nagging voice saying you're not good enough, this is for you. Confidence isn't about faking it until you make it. It's about rewiring your mindset, removing the patterns that undermine you, one step at a time. By the end of this video, you'll have the tools to recognize these toxic thoughts and finally take back control over your self-belief. Now, let's explore the first toxic thought pattern and why it's a silent confidence killer. Number 1, the perfectionism trap. Perfectionism, on the surface, it sounds like a virtue, doesn't it? The relentless pursuit of excellence, a commitment to doing things right. But beneath the surface lies a more complex reality. Perfectionism often erodes confidence and paralyzes progress, leaving us stuck in a loop of self-doubt and procrastination. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine this. Emma, a talented graphic designer, is working on a portfolio project. She sets a goal to create the perfect presentation that will wow her potential clients. She spends hours obsessing over every detail, the fonts, the colors, even the spacing between letters. Days turn into weeks, and the project still isn't ready. What's stopping her? Fear. Fear that it's not perfect enough. Fear of criticism. Fear of failure. Emma's perfectionism, which started as a drive for excellence, has become a trap. It's eroding her confidence. Every time she delays finishing the project, she convinces herself that she's not good enough. It's paralyzing her progress. She's stuck in an endless cycle of revisions, unable to move forward. Does this sound familiar? If so, you're not alone. Point number 1. Let's talk about how perfectionism erodes confidence. Here's the tricky part about perfectionism. It creates a standard so high that it's almost impossible to meet. And when we inevitably fall short, we feel like failures. Each attempt to perfect something often brings frustration instead of satisfaction. This constant striving, paired with self-criticism, chips away at our self-esteem. Instead of celebrating what we've achieved, we focus on what's missing. Worse still, perfectionism thrives on comparison. We look at others, at their polished work, their seemingly flawless results, and think, why can't I be like that? But here's the truth. No one's perfect. The polished results we see are just that, results. What we don't see is the messy, imperfect process that led there. Point number 2. How do we break free from this trap? Let's explore a few simple strategies together. First, redefine success. Instead of aiming for perfection, aim for progress. Focus on completing tasks rather than making them flawless. Ask yourself, is this good enough to move forward? And trust the answer. Remember, done is better than perfect. Each small step forward builds momentum and confidence. Next, embrace imperfection. Shift your mindset. Imperfections aren't flaws, they're signs of growth. Every mistake is a learning opportunity. Every imperfect effort is a stepping stone to improvement. Start by sharing something unfinished, like Emma could have done with her portfolio. The feedback she'd receive would help her refine her work without the weight of perfection holding her back. And finally, set realistic goals. Break large projects into smaller, manageable tasks. Instead of saying, "I need to create a perfect presentation," Emma could say, "Today, I'll finalize the first draft." Small, achievable goals create a sense of accomplishment and reduce the overwhelm that perfectionism feeds on. Point number 3. Let me leave you with this thought. Perfectionism isn't about excellence, it's about fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. But progress doesn't come from fear, it comes from courage. So the next time you find yourself stuck, ask this: am I aiming for progress or perfection? Shift your focus, take that first step, and watch as confidence replaces doubt and momentum takes the place of paralysis. Number 2, constantly seeking validation. Have you ever caught yourself refreshing your social media feed, waiting for likes on a post? Or maybe you asked someone for their opinion on something you already knew was good, but still needed reassurance. Seeking validation, it's something we all do from time to time, but when it becomes a habit, it can turn into a thought pattern that traps us. Instead of trusting our own judgment, we begin relying on others to define our worth. Let me share a story that might sound familiar. Imagine David. He's an aspiring writer, and he's just finished a short story he's proud of. But instead of submitting it to a contest or sharing it with his readers, he sends it to 5 friends asking, "What do you think? Is it good enough?" One friend says it's great, another suggests changes. The rest don't respond quickly enough, leaving David feeling anxious, doubtful, and stuck. Now he's second-guessing everything. Was it really good? Should he rewrite it? What if no one likes it? David's habit of seeking validation is holding him back. Instead of believing in his own abilities, he's outsourcing his confidence to others. Point number 1. Why do we constantly seek validation? It's simple. Validation feels good. A compliment, a like, or a nod of approval activates the reward centers in our brain. It's like a quick hit of dopamine, making us feel accepted and valued. But here's the problem. When we rely too much on external validation, it becomes addictive. We start needing it to feel worthy, and when we don't get it, we feel empty, rejected, and unsure of ourselves. This habit erodes our self-confidence. Instead of trusting our instincts, we place our sense of worth in the hands of others. And let's face it, not everyone will always see things the way we do, nor should they. Point number 2. How do we break free from this pattern? Let's look at some practical steps. First, learn to validate yourself. Instead of asking, "What do others think?" ask yourself, "What do I think?" Develop the habit of trusting your own judgment. For example, if David had paused to reflect on his story, he might have realized, "I've worked hard on this. It feels complete. That's enough for me." Self-validation takes practice, but the more you do it, the less you'll rely on others for approval. Second, set boundaries around seeking feedback. Feedback is valuable, but only when it's intentional. Decide who you want feedback from and when. In David's case, instead of sending his story to 5 friends, he could choose one trusted mentor and ask for specific input, like, "Do you think the ending flows well?" This approach keeps feedback focused and productive without making it a source of validation. Third, focus on intrinsic rewards. Ask yourself, "Why am I doing this?" If your motivation is tied to external rewards, like likes, praise, or applause, it's time to shift gears. David could remind himself, "I write because I love storytelling, because it makes me happy." Reconnecting with your internal motivations builds resilience. You'll find joy in the process, regardless of the outcome. Point number 3. Let's talk about one more thing: accepting imperfection. Validation seeking often stems from a fear of being wrong, of not being enough. But here's the truth. You don't need to be perfect to be worthy. Every creative work, every idea, every effort, it's a reflection of where you are right now, and that's okay. You don't need everyone's approval to move forward. David didn't need to wait for his friends to validate his story. If he believed in it, he could have taken the leap, imperfections and all. Point number 4, here's a thought to leave you with. When you seek validation, you give away your power, your confidence, your sense of worth. But when you trust yourself, you take that power back. You start to realize that your value doesn't come from what others think. It comes from who you are and the effort you put in. So the next time you catch yourself waiting for someone else's approval, pause and ask, what do I think? Your opinion matters too. Trust it. Number 3, overgeneralizing failures. Have you ever failed at something and immediately thought to yourself, I'm terrible at this. I'll never succeed? This is a classic example of overgeneralizing failures, a sneaky thought pattern that convinces us a single setback defines our entire ability. It's like taking one bad chapter in a book and deciding the whole story is ruined. Let me paint you a picture to make it clearer. Imagine Sarah. She's an artist who loves painting, and for months she's been preparing for an art exhibition. She pours her heart into her work, spending late nights perfecting every detail. But on the night of the exhibition, something unexpected happens. Her favorite painting, a piece she's incredibly proud of, doesn't sell. Instead of focusing on the other positive feedback she's received, Sarah fixates on that one moment. Her mind spirals. I failed. No one likes my art. Maybe I'm not good enough to be an artist. Sarah's thoughts turn one isolated event into a sweeping judgment about her entire talent and future. Point number 1. Why do we overgeneralize failures? It comes down to our brain's natural negativity bias. Our minds are wired to focus on what went wrong because, in ancient times, it helped us survive. But in modern life, this bias can work against us, amplifying small setbacks into overwhelming doubts. When we overgeneralize, we label ourselves based on a single experience, instead of seeing failure for what it truly is, a learning opportunity. Think about it. Does one missed goal make you a failure? Does one mistake define your worth? Of course not. Yet this is how overgeneralization tricks us into thinking small missteps are permanent truths. Point number 2. How can we break free from this pattern? The first step is simple but powerful. Recognize and reframe your thoughts. When Sarah caught herself thinking, no one likes my art, she could have paused and asked, is that really true? Reframing means challenging the negative story your mind is telling you. Sarah could have reminded herself, one painting didn't sell, but others did. People enjoyed my work. This doesn't mean I'm a bad artist. It's just one moment. Reframing doesn't erase the failure, but it helps you see it in context without letting it define you. The second step is to focus on specific feedback. Failure often comes with lessons if we're willing to look for them. Instead of dwelling on the sale she didn't make, Sarah could ask the gallery owner for insights. Was the price too high? Did the painting need a different audience? When you shift your focus to actionable feedback, failure becomes a stepping stone instead of a wall. Third, practice self-compassion. Think about how you'd talk to a friend who experienced the same thing. Would you say, you're a failure and you'll never succeed? Of course not. You'd probably say, it's just one setback. You'll get there. Now give yourself that same kindness. Remind yourself, everyone fails. It's part of the journey. Self-compassion isn't about ignoring mistakes. It's about treating yourself with understanding and patience as you grow. Point number 3. Let's look at why failures are actually opportunities in disguise. Take any success story, and you'll find failures along the way. Thomas Edison, for example, famously said, I didn't fail 1,000 times. I found 1,000 ways that didn't work. Each failure taught him something valuable, bringing him closer to success. The same applies to Sarah or to you. When you stop overgeneralizing and start learning, failures lose their power to paralyze you. Instead, they become part of your growth. Point number 4. Here's something to remember the next time you face a setback. Failures aren't permanent. but the lessons they teach can last a lifetime. Sarah's unsold painting didn't mean her career was over. It was a moment to learn, adjust, and keep going. And the same is true for you. When you feel yourself spiraling into overgeneralization, pause, take a deep breath, and remind yourself, this is just one moment. It doesn't define me. By breaking free from the trap of overgeneralizing, you'll start to see failure for what it truly is, a stepping stone to something greater. Number 4, catastrophizing every situation. Have you ever faced a small problem and immediately thought, this is the end of the world? If so, you've fallen into the trap of catastrophizing, a thought pattern where your mind jumps to the worst-case scenario, even when the evidence doesn't support it. Let's explore this through a relatable example. Imagine David, a young professional who recently started a new job. One morning, his manager sends him an email asking for a meeting. There's no context provided, just a simple, let's discuss your performance later today. For the rest of the day, David's mind spirals. What did I do wrong? Am I about to get fired? This job was my big break. If I lose it, my career is over. By the time of the meeting, David is so anxious he can barely focus. But as it turns out, the manager only wanted to compliment his recent project and discuss future opportunities. David's entire day was consumed by unnecessary stress, all because his mind magnified a simple email into a catastrophe. Point number 1. Why do we catastrophize? Catastrophizing often stems from fear, fear of the unknown, fear of failure, or fear of being unprepared. It's a survival mechanism our brains develop to anticipate danger. But in modern life, it works against us. Think about it. Does expecting the worst actually help you? Most of the time, the worst-case scenario never happens. But by imagining it, we put ourselves through unnecessary emotional pain. When you catastrophize, you're not just dealing with the situation at hand, you're also battling an exaggerated version of it that exists only in your mind. Point number 2. How can you stop catastrophizing in its tracks? The first step is to recognize when it's happening. David could have paused and asked himself, what evidence do I have that I'm getting fired? Is there another explanation for this meeting? When you feel your mind spiraling, stop and challenge the narrative. Ask yourself, what's the most likely outcome here? Am I basing this on facts or fears? This simple pause can break the cycle and bring your focus back to reality. The next step is to reframe your thoughts. Instead of jumping to the worst-case scenario, try imagining the best-case scenario or even a neutral one. For example, David could have thought, maybe this meeting is about something positive. Even if it's about a mistake, I can learn from it and improve. Reframing doesn't mean ignoring potential challenges. It just means not letting fear control the story you tell yourself. Point number 3, another powerful technique is to practice grounding exercises. When your mind is racing, bring your focus back to the present moment. Try this simple exercise. 1. Take a deep breath in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, and exhale for 4 seconds. 2. Look around and name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Grounding helps you step out of your anxious thoughts and reconnect with reality. Point number 4. Finally, prepare for challenges without dwelling on them. There's a difference between being prepared and catastrophizing. Being prepared means thinking through potential obstacles and finding solutions, while catastrophizing means assuming the worst and letting it overwhelm you. David could have prepared for his meeting by reviewing his recent work and thinking about ways to improve. This approach focuses on action rather than fear. Point number 5. Here's an important truth to remember. Most of the things we catastrophize about never actually happen. And when challenges do arise, they're often less overwhelming than we imagine. Think about a time when you worried endlessly about something that turned out fine. How much time and energy did you waste on those fears? By learning to stop catastrophizing, you free yourself from unnecessary stress and create space for clarity, action, and growth. Let's revisit David's story for a moment. If he'd paused to challenge his thoughts, reframed the situation and focused on preparation, his day could have been much calmer. He might have even walked into that meeting feeling confident, ready to discuss his achievements. When you catch yourself catastrophizing, remember this: the mind loves to create stories, but you have the power to rewrite them. Number 5, comparing yourself to others. Do you ever find yourself scrolling through social media or observing someone else's success and thinking, why am I not there yet? If so, you're not alone. This thought pattern, comparing yourself to others, is one of the most common traps, and it can erode your confidence in ways you might not even realize. Let's talk about why we compare, why it hurts us, and how to break free from this cycle. Imagine Sarah, an aspiring writer. Sarah has always loved storytelling. She's just started sharing her work online, feeling proud of her progress. But one day, while browsing a popular writing platform, she stumbles upon another writer, someone with thousands of followers, a polished portfolio, and glowing reviews. Instantly, Sarah's excitement turns into doubt. Why am I not as good as them? Will I ever reach that level? Maybe I should just quit. Her mind spirals into a loop of self-doubt, and she spends the next few days questioning her abilities instead of working on her craft. Point number 1. Why do we compare ourselves to others? Comparing yourself to others is a natural tendency. Humans are social creatures, and from an early age, we're taught to measure ourselves against those around us. This helped our ancestors compete and survive, but in today's world, it can backfire. Think about it. When you compare, you're often looking at someone else's highlight reel while judging yourself based on your behind-the-scenes struggles. You see their polished successes, but not their challenges, failures, or sacrifices. In Sarah's case, she's comparing her early writing journey to someone else's years of experience, a completely unfair comparison. Point number 2. Why does this hurt so much? When you constantly compare, you create a mental trap where your own progress never feels good enough. Instead of celebrating your wins, you focus on what you lack. This not only erodes your confidence, but also paralyzes progress. Why? Because the more you believe you'll never measure up, the less motivated you feel to even try. Point number 3. So, how can we stop comparing ourselves to others? The first step is to shift your perspective. Instead of seeing others as competition, view them as inspiration. Ask yourself, 1. What can I learn from their journey? 2. How can I use their success to motivate my own growth? Sarah, for example, could have looked at the experienced writer and thought, this is where I want to be someday. What steps can I take to get there? By shifting her mindset, she could have turned comparison into a source of encouragement rather than doubt. Point number 4. Next, focus on your own journey. Remember, progress isn't about being better than someone else. It's about being better than you were yesterday. Try keeping a journal where you track your wins, no matter how small they seem. For example, today I wrote 500 words. I received positive feedback on my story. These small victories remind you of how far you've come and keep your focus where it belongs, on your growth. Point number 5. Limit your exposure to comparison triggers. Social media, for instance, is a major culprit. If scrolling leaves you feeling inadequate, take a step back. Curate your feed to include content that uplifts and inspires you rather than feeds your insecurities. Sarah could unfollow accounts that make her feel discouraged and instead follow writers who share tips, struggles, and encouragement. Point number 6. Practice gratitude. When you focus on what you have rather than what you lack, it's harder to fall into the comparison trap. Each day, write down 3 things you're grateful for, big or small. For example, Sarah might list 1. I'm grateful for the time I have to write. 2. I'm grateful for the supportive feedback I've received. 3. I'm grateful for the ideas that inspire my stories. Gratitude shifts your attention to the positive, helping you appreciate your unique journey. Point number 7. Finally, remember this truth. No two paths are the same. Everyone has their own struggles, strengths, and timeline. Comparing yourself to others is like comparing a seed to a tree. It's not fair, and it doesn't make sense. Sarah's story could have gone differently if she'd reminded herself, "That writer was once where I am now. My journey is just beginning, and it's okay to grow at my own pace." When you feel the urge to compare, pause and ask yourself, 1. What do I admire about this person? 2. How can I apply that to my own goals? Then, bring the focus back to your journey. Celebrate your wins, learn from your challenges, and trust that with time and effort, you'll get where you want to be. You don't need to be anyone else to succeed. You just need to be the best version of yourself. Number 6, negative self-talk. You know that little voice in your head, the one that whispers, "You're not good enough. You'll never get this right." If you're nodding, you've probably experienced the destructive force of negative self-talk. It's a thought pattern that chips away at your confidence and stops you from reaching your potential. Let's explore how this inner critic works, why it's so damaging, and how to replace it with a kinder, more empowering voice. Picture Daniel. Daniel is a young graphic designer trying to land his first big client. He spends weeks perfecting his portfolio and finally sends it out to a potential employer. Days pass, and there's no response. Instead of thinking, maybe they're busy, his inner critic jumps in. "Your work wasn't good enough. Why did you even bother? You're never going to make it in this field." Those words feel like a gut punch. Suddenly, Daniel's confidence plummets, and he stops pitching his work altogether. Point number 1. Why does negative self-talk feel so real? Negative self-talk often disguises itself as logic. It sounds convincing because it stems from our fears and insecurities, those deep-rooted doubts we've carried for years. For Daniel, the rejection, or silence, wasn't a reflection of his talent, but his inner critic turned it into proof that he wasn't good enough. And here's the thing. Your brain tends to believe the stories you repeat to yourself. If you keep telling yourself you'll fail, you start acting as if it's true, sabotaging your progress before you even begin. Point number 2. How does this thought pattern affect your life? Negative self-talk is like carrying a heavy backpack everywhere you go. It slows you down and makes every step feel harder. When you constantly criticize yourself, you 1. Doubt your abilities. 2. Avoid challenges because you fear failure, miss opportunities for growth and success. In Daniel's case, his inner critic stopped him from pursuing more clients. Instead of learning and improving, he stayed stuck in a cycle of doubt and inaction. Point number 3. So how can you silence your inner critic? The good news is, you don't have to live with negative self-talk forever. You can rewire your thoughts and build a healthier relationship with yourself. Step 1, notice the voice. The first step is awareness. Pay attention to when your inner critic speaks up. What does it say? When does it happen? For example, Daniel might notice that his negative self-talk surfaces after rejection or when he's trying something new. Recognizing these triggers helps you prepare for them. Step 2, challenge the negativity. Once you're aware of the negative voice, question its validity. Ask yourself, 1. Is this thought really true? 2. What evidence supports it? 3. What would I say to a friend in this situation? Daniel could ask, is my work really bad? Or am I assuming that because I didn't get a reply? This shift in perspective weakens the grip of negative self-talk. Step 3. Replace it with positive affirmations. Instead of letting your inner critic dominate, replace those thoughts with encouraging ones. Speak to yourself the way you'd encourage someone you care about. For instance, Daniel could remind himself, rejection is part of the process. My work is improving, and I'll find the right client if I keep trying. At first, this might feel unnatural, but over time, positive affirmations can reprogram your mindset. Step 4. Take small, confident actions. The best way to silence your inner critic is through action. Prove to yourself that you're capable. Start with small steps that build momentum. Daniel might decide to pitch his portfolio to 5 more clients, regardless of his fears. Each small win builds confidence and quiets the negativity. Point number 4. Don't go it alone. Sometimes our inner critic feels too loud to handle alone. This is where external support comes in. Talk to a trusted friend, mentor, or coach who can provide a more balanced perspective. Daniel could share his struggles with a fellow designer or join a creative community. Hearing others' experiences can help him see that rejection is normal and doesn't define his worth. Point number 5. Practice self-compassion. Negative self-talk thrives on perfectionism, the idea that you have to be flawless to be worthy. But the truth is, nobody's perfect. Mistakes and failures are part of being human, and they're opportunities to learn. When you catch yourself being overly critical, pause and say, "It's okay. I'm doing my best, and that's enough." Over time, this shift can transform your mindset and rebuild your confidence. Remember this: your inner critic isn't your truth. It's just a habit of thinking. And like any habit, it can be changed. You're capable, resilient, and worthy of success, no matter what that little voice might say. Number 7, imposter syndrome. You've probably heard of imposter syndrome, that feeling like you're not truly deserving of your success. Like one day, everyone will find out you're not as competent or skilled as they think you are. You may have earned your promotion, landed that new job, or received praise for your work, but somewhere deep down, you can't shake the belief that you're just faking it. And soon, everyone will figure it out. It's like wearing a mask that's slowly slipping off, and you're terrified of being exposed. Sound familiar? If so, you're not alone. Imposter syndrome affects many high-achieving individuals. Let's take a closer look at how it works and how to break free. Imagine Sarah. Sarah just started her new role as a marketing manager at a large company. She's been working hard, getting good feedback, and successfully managing several key projects. But every time her boss praises her, a voice inside her head whispers, "They think you're good at this, but they don't know the truth. You're not really qualified for this position. You just got lucky." Even though Sarah has the skills and experience to succeed, she feels like an imposter. Her achievements feel undeserved. Every success is followed by self-doubt. Point number 1. Why does imposter syndrome happen? Imposter syndrome is rooted in the perfectionism trap. When we set impossibly high standards for ourselves, we start to believe that anything less than perfect is unacceptable. In Sarah's case, her fear of making mistakes, combined with the pressure to be flawless, creates a mental barrier. She feels like she has to maintain this perfect image at all times, and any mistake could shatter her credibility. This kind of thinking distorts reality. The truth is, everyone makes mistakes, and they're often the best learning experiences. But the perfectionist mind doesn't see it that way. Point number 2. How does imposter syndrome affect your confidence? Imposter syndrome doesn't just erode your confidence, it paralyzes you. When you believe you don't deserve your success, you constantly second-guess yourself. You question your decisions, your skills, and your worth. This can lead to feelings of inadequacy, stress, and burnout. Sarah might feel like she's always on edge, afraid of being found out. This fear holds her back from taking risks or pushing herself to grow further. She spends more energy trying to appear flawless than actually taking bold, confident actions. Point number 3, the cycle of self-doubt. One of the tricky things about imposter syndrome is that it creates a cycle of self-doubt. Here's how it works. 1. You achieve something significant, like getting a promotion or completing a big project. 2. Instead of feeling proud, your inner critic steps in and says, "You don't deserve this." 3. This leads to fear, fear of being exposed as a fraud. 4th, so you work even harder to prove yourself. 5. The cycle repeats. Sarah could start overworking herself, trying to prove her worth even though she's already performing well. But no matter how much she achieves, she'll still feel like an imposter if she doesn't break this pattern. Point number 4. How can you overcome imposter syndrome? Step 1. Acknowledge the feeling. The first step in overcoming imposter syndrome is to admit that it's happening. It's normal to feel this way, but that doesn't mean you should let it control your actions. Sarah could start by acknowledging that these feelings of self-doubt are not a reflection of her abilities. They're just a part of her perfectionist thinking. Step 2. Reframe your thoughts. Instead of seeing yourself as a fraud, reframe the way you think about your achievements. You didn't get where you are by luck. You earned it through hard work and skill. Sarah might start telling herself, "I've worked hard for this position, and my success is a result of my skills and dedication." When the imposter voice speaks up, challenge it. Ask yourself, what evidence do I have that supports my success? Step 3. Focus on learning, not perfection. One of the reasons imposter syndrome thrives is because of the fear of mistakes. The key to overcoming it is embracing imperfection. Instead of aiming for flawless performance, focus on growth and learning. Sarah could start seeing her mistakes as valuable lessons, stepping stones on her journey. Step 4. Share your feelings. Imposter syndrome can feel isolating, but talking about it can make it less overwhelming. You might be surprised to learn that many successful people feel the same way. Sarah could have an honest conversation with a mentor or colleague. By sharing her struggles, she could gain perspective and realize that even the most successful individuals have doubts. Step 5. Celebrate your achievements. Take the time to celebrate your wins, big or small. When you acknowledge and appreciate your progress, it reinforces the fact that you deserve success. Instead of brushing off compliments, take a moment to say, "Thank you, I worked hard for this." Over time, this practice will help shift your mindset. Point number 5. Keep moving forward. The key to overcoming imposter syndrome isn't to completely eliminate self-doubt, it's to learn how to manage it. By shifting your mindset from perfectionism to progress, you can break free from the cycle of self-doubt. Sarah may always feel a little nervous in her new role, but by taking small steps to challenge her imposter thoughts, she can regain her confidence and continue succeeding. Remember, you are not an imposter. You're someone who's worked hard to get where you are. Your success is earned, not luck. And the next time imposter syndrome rears its head, remind yourself that you deserve everything you've achieved. Number 8, the all or nothing mindset. We've all been there. You set a goal. Maybe it's to exercise every day, finish a project by a specific deadline, or even change a bad habit. You're determined to stick to it, but somewhere along the way, things don't go exactly as planned. You miss a day, fall behind, or make a mistake, and suddenly the whole thing feels ruined. This is the all or nothing mindset, a thought pattern that sees things as either completely perfect or completely failed. In this way of thinking, even the smallest slip-up can feel like a total disaster, making it hard to keep moving forward. But here's the problem. Perfectionism and this mindset don't just hurt your confidence, they paralyze your progress. Let's break it down and explore how the all or nothing mindset works, and more importantly, how you can overcome it. Point number 1. Why does the all or nothing mindset happen? It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking in extremes. The all or nothing mindset is a product of perfectionism. If you set out to do something perfectly, it can feel like any imperfection means failure. You either get everything done just right, or you failed completely. There's no middle ground. Imagine John, for example. He's trying to lose weight and decides that he'll eat healthy every single day. He's determined to stick to his diet perfectly. But one afternoon, he eats a slice of cake at a family gathering. It wasn't part of the plan, and in his mind he thinks, well, I've already messed up today. Might as well eat whatever I want for the rest of the week. This is the all-or-nothing trap. John's mistake seems so big in his mind that he abandons his goal altogether, thinking there's no point in trying anymore. The truth, that single slice of cake doesn't determine his success or failure, yet, because of the extreme way of thinking, he feels defeated. Point number 2. How does this mindset affect progress? The all-or-nothing thinking makes it hard to see progress. It focuses on the end result, instead of recognizing the small steps along the way. John could have viewed his situation differently. I had a moment of weakness, but that doesn't define my journey. I'll just get back on track tomorrow. But because of the extreme mindset, he focuses on the failure, not the progress. This causes him to stop trying and miss out on the incremental improvements he could make. Here's where it gets tricky. Perfectionism leads to paralysis. When you're stuck thinking you have to be perfect, even a small mistake can feel like a huge setback. But that's not reality. The reality is, progress is messy. You'll make mistakes, miss a step, or lose your way from time to time. That's part of growth. Point number 3, the negative effects on confidence. When you're stuck in the all-or-nothing mindset, your confidence takes a hit. Every time you make a mistake, you internalize it as a failure, which leads to self-doubt. The more you focus on your imperfections, the more you'll feel like you can't succeed. This, in turn, lowers your self-esteem. You start thinking, if I can't do it perfectly, I must not be capable at all. But the truth is, perfection is unattainable. There is no perfect way to achieve something. The key to success is consistency, not perfection. Point number 4, how can you overcome the all-or-nothing mindset? Step 1, embrace progress over perfection. Start by shifting your mindset. Instead of focusing on perfect outcomes, focus on your progress. Ask yourself, how can I improve a little bit every day? Even small steps forward are worth celebrating. For example, John could remind himself, it's okay to have a treat sometimes. It doesn't mean I've failed. The key is to keep going, no matter what. Step 2, break big goals into smaller tasks. When you have an overwhelming goal, break it down into smaller, manageable steps. This way, you avoid the temptation to think in extremes. Instead of aiming to be perfect at everything, aim to get a little better each day. If you fall short one day, it's okay. Just pick yourself back up and keep moving. Step 3, reframe mistakes as learning opportunities. Instead of seeing mistakes as signs of failure, view them as opportunities to learn and grow. Every setback is a chance to reflect, adjust, and move forward. John could see his slip-up as a valuable moment. He could ask himself, what can I learn from this? Maybe he realizes he needs to plan his meals better or carry healthier snacks to avoid temptations. Step 4, practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself. The all-or-nothing mindset thrives on self-criticism, so it's important to practice self-compassion. When you make a mistake, instead of beating yourself up, treat yourself with the same kindness you would offer a friend. Self-compassion helps you bounce back from setbacks quickly and keeps you focused on your goals. Step 5, celebrate your progress, not just the finish line. It's important to recognize the little wins along the way. Don't wait for the perfect result to celebrate your efforts. John might celebrate every day he stays on track with his diet, or every time he gets back on track after a mistake. Celebrating small victories reinforces the idea that progress, not perfection, is what matters most. Point number 5, keep going, no matter what. The all-or-nothing mindset can hold you back, making you feel like any mistake is a failure. But if you break free from this mindset, you can build true momentum. Don't aim for perfection, aim for progress. And remember, a setback doesn't mean the end of the road. It's just a small bump along the way. When you embrace progress, celebrate each step forward, and allow yourself to learn from mistakes, you'll build lasting confidence. And with each new day, you'll find yourself closer to your goals, one small step at a time. Number 9, dwelling on the past. We've all been there. That nagging feeling in the back of your mind that keeps dragging you back to a mistake, a missed opportunity, or a time when things didn't go the way you wanted. The more you think about it, the more you spiral into self-doubt. You replay the situation over and over, wishing you could change the past. This thought pattern is known as dwelling on the past, and it's one of the most destructive aspects of the perfectionism trap. When you're stuck in the past, it's almost impossible to move forward. You become paralyzed by regret, and that erodes your confidence. Instead of focusing on what you can do now, you're trapped in a cycle of what-ifs. But how can you break free from this pattern? Let's dive in and explore how dwelling on the past holds you back and what you can do to overcome it. Point number 1. Why do we dwell on the past? The first step in overcoming this pattern is understanding why we do it. Perfectionism makes us feel like we should have done things better or differently. It's a mindset that tells us that the past defines us, that if we made a mistake or missed an opportunity, we are somehow flawed. For example, consider Sarah, a woman who lost a business deal a year ago. Every time she thinks about it, she can't help but feel guilty and regretful. She replays the conversation in her mind, imagining what she could have said or done differently. She thinks to herself, if only I had spoken up during the meeting, if only I hadn't made that mistake. But here's the problem. Dwelling on the past doesn't change anything. Sarah can't go back in time and fix her mistake. Yet by continually replaying it, she's allowing that single event to control her emotions and prevent her from moving forward. Point number 2, the impact on confidence and progress. When you constantly dwell on past mistakes or missed chances, your confidence takes a hit. Instead of seeing yourself as capable of handling challenges, you start to see yourself as someone who's bound to mess up. This lack of confidence can paralyze you, making it harder to take risks or try new things. Every time Sarah thinks about that missed deal, she feels less confident about her ability to succeed in future opportunities. She becomes afraid of failing again, which causes her to hesitate and hold back from taking action. This fear makes her even more likely to avoid new opportunities, keeping her stuck in the past. Point number 3, the cycle of self-blame. Perfectionism often feeds into self-blame. You take full responsibility for things that didn't go as planned, even when external factors played a role. This negative self-talk only deepens the habit of dwelling on the past, making it harder to move on. When Sarah thinks about her business deal, she blames herself for the failure. She convinces herself that she was the only one at fault and that she didn't try hard enough. By doing this, she gives herself no room for growth. Instead of seeing it as an experience to learn from, she sees it as a permanent reflection of her inadequacy. Point number 4, how to stop dwelling on the past. Now that we understand why we tend to dwell on the past, let's talk about how we can stop. It's all about shifting your perspective and learning to let go of what you cannot change. Step 1, focus on the present moment. The best way to break free from dwelling on the past is to practice mindfulness, focusing on the present moment. Every time you catch yourself thinking about a past mistake, gently redirect your attention back to what's happening right now. Ask yourself, what can I do right now to move forward? For example, instead of thinking about what went wrong with the business deal, Sarah could focus on what she can do today to make her next presentation better. By focusing on the present, she gives herself the opportunity to grow instead of staying stuck in regret. Step 2, reframe your mistakes as learning experiences. Instead of seeing past failures as signs of your flaws, try reframing them as opportunities to learn and grow. Mistakes are a natural part of life and often provide the most valuable lessons. Sarah could look at her failed business deal and ask herself, what did I learn from this? How can I improve next time? Reframing her mistake this way will help her see it as a stepping stone towards success rather than a roadblock. Step 3. Practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself. We all make mistakes, and no one is perfect. When you find yourself dwelling on a past event, try treating yourself with the same compassion you would offer a friend. Instead of criticizing yourself, Sarah could say, "It's okay to have made a mistake. I'm only human. I'll do better next time." This kind of self-compassion helps you move past regret and keeps you from getting stuck in negative thinking. Step 4. Take action toward your goals. The best way to stop dwelling on the past is to take action toward your future. When you make progress, you shift your focus from what went wrong to what you're doing right. Sarah could set new, achievable goals for her business. Every time she takes a step toward those goals, she shifts her attention away from the past and toward her future. The more she focuses on progress, the less power past mistakes will have over her. Step 5. Accept that you can't change the past. Finally, remember that the past is gone, and no amount of thinking will change it. Acceptance is a key step in moving forward. Sarah needs to accept that she can't change what happened with the business deal, but she can control what she does now. Once you accept the past for what it is, you can free yourself to focus on the present and future. Point number 5. Moving forward with confidence. Dwelling on the past may seem like a natural reaction when things don't go as planned, but it only keeps you stuck in the same place. By practicing mindfulness, reframing mistakes as learning experiences, and treating yourself with compassion, you can break free from this cycle. Remember, the only moment you can control is the present. So, don't let past mistakes or missed opportunities rob you of your confidence or progress. Every step you take today brings you closer to a brighter future. Keep moving forward, one small action at a time. Number 10. The fear of judgment. Have you ever held yourself back from speaking up, trying something new, or pursuing your goals because you were afraid of what others might think? If so, you're not alone. This is a common thought pattern known as the fear of judgment. It's a major contributor to perfectionism, and it has the power to crush your confidence and paralyze your progress. The fear of judgment can prevent you from stepping outside your comfort zone, from taking risks, or even from being your true self. Instead of focusing on what you want or what's right for you, you become consumed by the opinions of others. And the more you try to control how others perceive you, the more you start to lose sight of your own goals. So, how does this fear of judgment tie into perfectionism, and how can you overcome it? Let's take a deeper look. Point number 1. How the fear of judgment paralyzes progress. The fear of judgment creates a cycle of overthinking and hesitation. When you're focused on how others might perceive you, it's hard to make decisions with confidence. You second-guess yourself, constantly worrying that your actions won't meet others' expectations. As a result, progress slows down or even comes to a halt. Take Alex, for example. He's a talented writer, but he's always afraid that his work won't be good enough for his audience. He spends days rereading and revising his drafts, afraid of how his readers will respond. He can't seem to move forward because he's stuck in a loop of fear. Fear that his writing won't be perfect, fear that it won't live up to what others expect of him. The fear of judgment isn't just about worrying what people think in the moment. It often extends to the future, imagining all the ways your work might be criticized or rejected. The more you worry about this, the harder it becomes to take action. Point number 2, the link between perfectionism and the fear of judgment. Perfectionism and the fear of judgment go hand in hand. As perfectionists, we set impossibly high standards for ourselves. We convince ourselves that if we're perfect, we'll avoid judgment, rejection, or criticism. In reality, perfection doesn't guarantee acceptance. It only sets us up for disappointment. When you fear judgment, you believe that making a mistake or showing vulnerability will lead to rejection or criticism. So, you avoid taking risks or trying new things. But this cycle of perfectionism only erodes your confidence and keeps you stuck in a place where you're too afraid to take action. Think about Sarah, who dreams of starting her own business but is terrified of what people will think. She wonders, what if people think my business idea is silly? What if I fail in front of others? The fear of judgment paralyzes her, and she never moves forward with her plans. Point number 3, the internal critic feeding your fear. One of the biggest culprits behind the fear of judgment is your internal critic. This is the voice inside your head that constantly tells you that you're not good enough, that you're going to mess up, or that others will judge you harshly. It's that voice that fuels your perfectionism and keeps you trapped in a cycle of self-doubt. Every time Alex sits down to write, his internal critic tells him, "This isn't good enough. They'll laugh at you. You'll never be as good as others." He listens to these thoughts and becomes paralyzed by the fear of judgment. He's so focused on avoiding criticism that he forgets to trust his own abilities and take risks. The internal critic makes the fear of judgment feel real. But in reality, this voice isn't telling you the truth. It's just a reflection of your fears and insecurities. It's important to recognize this and challenge the negative thoughts that come from your inner critic. Point number 4, overcoming the fear of judgment. So, how can you overcome the fear of judgment and break free from perfectionism? It's all about changing your mindset and focusing on your own growth instead of worrying about what others think. Here are some actionable steps to help you let go of the fear of judgment. Step 1. Challenge the negative thoughts. When you find yourself worrying about what others will think, take a step back and ask yourself, is this thought really true? Often, the fear of judgment is based on assumptions, not facts. When Alex starts worrying about how his writing will be received, he can remind himself that not everyone will love his work, and that's okay. What matters is that he's doing his best and moving forward. Step 2. Focus on what you can control. The fear of judgment often comes from feeling like you have to control how others perceive you. But the truth is, you can't control what other people think. What you can control is how you respond to their opinions and how you handle criticism. Instead of worrying about judgment, focus on improving yourself and your skills. Sarah can focus on improving her business plan, taking small steps each day. When she puts energy into her own growth, the fear of judgment begins to fade. Step 3. Accept that failure is part of the process. Remember that nobody is perfect, and everyone makes mistakes. Accepting failure as part of the learning process is essential for overcoming the fear of judgment. Instead of seeing failure as something to be ashamed of, embrace it as a stepping stone towards success. If Alex gets feedback that isn't perfect, he can choose to see it as constructive criticism that will help him improve next time. Instead of fearing rejection, he can see it as an opportunity to grow. Step 4. Be authentic. One of the best ways to avoid the fear of judgment is to be authentic. Be true to yourself. When you stop trying to please others or live up to unrealistic standards, you give yourself the freedom to take risks and pursue your own goals without worrying about others' opinions. Sarah can stop pretending to be someone she's not and instead create a business that reflects her true passions and values. When you're authentic, people are more likely to connect with you and appreciate your efforts. Step 5. Surround yourself with supportive people. Having a support system is crucial when you're working to overcome the fear of judgment. Surround yourself with people who encourage you, who believe in your abilities, and who will support you through challenges. This will help you feel more confident in your decisions and less worried about what others think. Point number 5. Moving forward with courage. Overcoming the fear of judgment isn't easy, but it's possible. The more you challenge your negative thoughts, focus on your growth, and embrace vulnerability, the less power judgment will have over you. Remember, you don't need to be perfect to succeed. What matters is that you take action, trust yourself, and keep moving forward despite your fears. As you move forward with courage, you'll begin to realize that the judgment you fear is often far less significant than you imagined. So take that first step, whether it's writing that first draft, pitching your business idea, or speaking up in a meeting. You've got this. In conclusion, we've covered a lot today. These 10 toxic thought patterns are real obstacles standing in the way of your confidence and progress. From perfectionism to the fear of judgment, each one holds you back in its own way. But here's the good news: you can break free. Recognize these patterns in your own thoughts, challenge them, and replace them with healthier, empowering beliefs. Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about growing, learning, and embracing who you are, imperfections and all. Start today by reflecting on the thoughts that limit you and take that first step toward positive change. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Or check out the next video for more practical tips on boosting your confidence and overcoming mental barriers. You've got this. Keep going.